Hello everybody, and this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions, bringing you another episode of Back to the Basics. This is episode number 3, and thank you guys for tuning in again for another Back to the Basics. Today we're going to be looking at a replay of a game that I played with a guy who reached out to me and wanted a little bit of coaching. We're not going to really talk about the game a whole lot. We're more or less going to be talking about hotkey bindings, as far as ordering them, getting your armies in the correct positions where you want them, and things of that nature. So, this was actually a comment that was left in the last episode, so feel free to go check that out, where we talked about worker production, when and when not to build workers. So, hotkey selection for your units is actually kind of more of a you kind of have to lay the ground rules as far as what you want as far as hotkeys. I'll talk a little bit about some of the pro players that I've seen as far as what they've chosen to do with hotkeys and what I think is very effective and not so much. But in general, my hotkeys are my 4 key is for my Nexus, and for all of my Nexus, that way I can go back and build probes at any given point in time, very easy. And then early game, I put my scouting probe on 1 until, I'm no longer in the scouting phase and I'm more so building units and things like that. And then I will rebind my number 1 key to my primary army composition key. Basically, any army unit that I build goes on my number 1 key, except for spellcasters and air units, depending on the matchup and what's going on. Quite honestly, 2 and 3 I really don't use unless I have spellcasters and air units. And in that case, I put my spellcasters on 2, basically Blinkstalkers, High Templars, and Centuries, and then all of my air units on 3. That way I can easily take my air units and focus down on what I need to at any given point in time. Now, that is how I see most pro Protoss players use their hotkeys. And then, as far as the unit composition goes, but the 5 and 6 key, I see some players put their secondary or tier 2 buildings, like your robotics facility, your Stargates, anything that can produce units on 5. That way you can easily hit the 5 key, build your unit, and then if you've got both the Robo and Stargate, you can just hit the Tab key and cycle through your Robo and your Stargate. That's what I find to be most effective as far as Protoss players go. Now, when you get into Zerg hotkeys are, in my opinion, a little bit more confusing, and it's definitely dependent upon the player, depends on how they play with it. Most of them have main army hotkey for on 1, and then their hatches on 3 or 4. Now, the difference between Zerg and Protoss players is obviously when you're playing a Zerg, you've got to deal more with injects, and there's not really a good, efficient way to structure your queens on a hotkey. So basically, this is where location hotkeys become very, very crucial, in that you have your F1, F2, F3, and F4 all hotkeyed up to your locations for your different hatcheries. That way you can easily go back to the location, click on your queen, and inject very, very smoothly, and you can just cycle through that just by hitting your function keys. But overall, I would say, yeah, main army is usually on 1, and then your air units or your spellcaster types are on 2, whether it be infestors or vipers for blinding cloud and things like that. And then also finally your 3 key is usually your air key. I would say probably your corruptors and your mutalisks and things like that, depending on where you're at and what your primary army is. Obviously mutalisks can go on 1 because they can be a main army composition, but that just kind of depends on your own preference. Then we get into Terran. Now, Terran is really, really simple, because usually you just have your command centers on 4, which is standard between all three races, and then every single production building can go on 3 or 5. And the reason why Terrans it's really nice because you can since you don't have like the W key for building stuff like you do for Protoss, and then for Zerg you have every single unit created at your hatchery, so you just go back to your hatchery and build units. So as Terran, you just have every single building on a single hotkey, and then you just cycle through it via the tab key just like you would as a Protoss player tier 2 units. Now we want to talk about upgrades a little bit. Now upgrade buildings, sometimes I hotkey them, sometimes I don't. I don't really have a good, this is what I do every single time. Sometimes what I'll do is I will actually hotkey them with the Nexus, and since the Nexus is the primary building, you could just tab between your different tech structures that you're getting upgrades, like, so I put like my Cybernetics Core, my Forges, my Twilight Council, and even the Templar Archives can go on your Nexus hotkey, and you can just cycle through them really easily. That way you have two or three clicks away from getting your upgrades going. And that's really all I had to talk about upgrades, or just preferences of bindings. I would really love to know what all you guys use for your binding keys. A lot of people, it's very different depending on the player on how you set up your bindings. So I'd be really interested to see what you guys enjoy as far as that goes. So feel free to leave all of that information in the comments. Also, if you'd like me to go over a game that you have, like a replay, I'd be happy to do a viewer cast of you. Feel free to shoot me an email to the email address in the description. If you have a topic that you'd like me to discuss on my Back to the Basics series, also feel free to leave that in the comments. Always looking for suggestions on new topics and things to discuss. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. So, that's really all I had. I can go ahead and speed it up super fast, assuming my computer doesn't like explode on me. This is actually a very long game that was... this is not worth our time. I'm not going to do it. I will let you know the outcome. Playing a Ryan who's a Mexican player. He wanted to get some coaching on his PvP and his PvZ. Still got a little bit of work to do, but overall I'd say he's doing very good for a Gold League player. And this game kind of turns into a base race style play, so anyways, so yeah, that's all I really had to talk about this, and I will see you all in the next game.